We've got some difficult decisions to make, and the more we can learn, the more we can use all the resources that are at our disposal. So with that in mind, I'd like to introduce our third panelist, Josh Lambert. He is the Invasive Species Program Manager with Lincoln Soil and Water Conservation District. The Conservation District works to improve and conserve natural resources in agriculture, forested, private, urban, and rural lands in Lincoln County by providing information, education, and outreach, providing an interface between agencies and landowners, collaborating with federal, state, and local government agencies and groups, and providing technical assistance to private landowners to develop and implement conservation plans on their own property. So Josh is someone who has already very patiently worked with this community to try to come up with some remedies for some of our most aggressive invasive species. But also know that he is a resource for you to call upon should you want his help on your own property. So with that, I will turn it over to Josh.
Thank you, Lorraine. And I'm glad that Lisa mentioned Pimentel. He's a researcher that a lot of people that work with invasive species tend to read or cite. He's the one that actually, he's an economist and an ecologist, and that's a pretty cool combination. And he's cited, Laura Lee mentioned billions, he cited it as doing the research to find that we're spending over $400 billion a year on invasive species, whether it's through agriculture or we're looking at the losses in natural resource function. It's a pretty astounding number, and I congratulate him for coming up with that number. So we've heard some really broad topics, some really great tools. I'm going to whittle this down to very specific species that has been dealt with in Yachats by the Soil and Water Conservation District and by the citizens. I did want to mention real quick about Soil and Water Conservation Districts. That was a great description of what we do. What we are is actually a special district. A lot of people tend to think we're a county organization, like Public Works, or we're just like a county department. We're actually a special district, a lot like a fire district or a water district. We abide by public meeting laws. We have elected board members. You probably see that on your ballot every once in a while. And we don't collect any user fees, and we don't have a tax base. We're 100% grant funded. So all the work I do, it tends to be filtered through the requirements of a grant. So it can confine management to some degree, and we can talk about that later. But I'm here today to talk about invasive species, in particular what I manage. The ones that I manage are knotweeds. Invasive knotweeds, they're originally from Asia, and most of you know them. They're originally brought in as ornamentals. Yachats has 2 of the 3 species in Lincoln County, Himalayan and Japanese. And they're extremely capable of outcompeting riparian habitat and floodplain habitat, and that is one of the large concerns. Not just in the Pacific Northwest or Yachats, but throughout the world. This is kind of a super breed of invasive species, and I think most people in this room know that, but I thought I'd just mention a couple other things about them. Knotweeds, they're massive bamboo-like perennial species. They're deciduous, meaning they die back each year. They can grow anywhere from 9 to 18 feet, depending on the species in a single season, which is one of the reasons why they're extremely good competitors. The foliage is known to contain chemicals that inhibit other species, which is a process known as allelopathy, which might be one of the reasons why they're really good at forming what Paul mentioned, monocultures. They primarily spread in this area by means of vegetation or vegetative dispersal. Virtually every part of the living tissue of knotweed can reproduce into a new plant, and it often comes from less than an inch of material. I'll show you a photo in a little bit of that process happening in Yachats. The typical disturbance regime of a river, where they typically inhabit because they're moist soil living species, is perfect for their spread. high flows, when they get established, they lack these really fine roots that a lot of our native species have. And with high flows, and you get during the winter time when they've died back and they eliminated all the native vegetation, it's a perfect recipe for spreading these species downstream. Ultimately, we're essentially concerned about the long term, and when I say me, I think it's everybody in this room, anybody that's aware of knotweed. We're concerned about the long-term potential permanent impacts of our river, riparian, and floodplain ecosystems. Ultimately, I mean, just to take an example, the loss of new trees in these areas, when I show you some of these photos, you'll be able to see trees cannot grow in this. The loss of these trees, these are the foundation of our river ecosystems. Not just structural, but functional. They're the basis of our food web and the basis of the complexity that our rivers require for things like salmon. In 2003, when this program got started, the original knotweed czar focused on the use of stem injection of herbicides. And that was obviously born out of this idea that we prefer not to spray herbicides near river sources. And so this concept of using these tools to inject was brought out. It's also born out of the fact that out of years of work by agencies and other management organizations, that cutting and mowing, especially in these riparian areas, just for large infestations, just is not effective, and it can a lot of times be counterintuitive or counterproductive. Knotweeds tend to actually respond to this kind of control if it's not done properly. More vigorous regrowth and spreading. And I can tell you, cutting up knotweed, the little fragments along a river bank is just a recipe for more spread, which we definitely don't want. So when I came on in 2009, we pretty much just continued the use of stem injection. One of the main reasons is after 4 years of use of this method, I was finding that we weren't actually having as much of an effect as we thought we were. We've controlled many sites. There's well over 1,000 documented sites throughout the county in every major river basin. And there are plenty of sites I've gone back to that are gone. They've been controlled. Herbicides do this. They do the trick in the right circumstances. But a lot of them were coming back, and I realized right off the bat, you can't treat everything with stem injection. And with a plant like knotweed, if you're not treating it thoroughly, you might as well just be cutting it up and throwing it into the river. You're not doing anybody any favors by improper use of herbicides, I can tell you that. And that's one of the major aspects of integrated pest management is proper use of your tools. Otherwise, it's a waste. And another thing is I realized that the amount of herbicides we were using for stem injection was enormous. You're using concentrated herbicide, and by switching to the use of foliar spray, actually reduces the amount. Like for a particular site where I'd be using 1.3 gallons of concentrated herbicide, I can now use about half a pint, mix in water, and I'm able to treat the site. That's about as in-depth I will get about treating the site, unless you want to hear more later. But I just want to make the point that herbicides as a group, they're not all equal in their toxicity to all organisms. Different groups of herbicides have different pathways of killing plants, and that's a fact. The active ingredient herbicides we use, and they're used extensively in habitat restoration, target an enzyme pathway that's only found in plants. That is the active ingredient. Now, herbicides typically come with proprietary ingredients, which can be labeled adjuvants or surfactants. They typically are put in there to help facilitate the use of that herbicide into a plant. The herbicides that we use are actually labeled for use near and in water. There's lots of aquatic plants out there that are actually grown in lakes, and that's why they manufacture these herbicides. And they don't include these surfactants, like the classic ones that are found around it, where the surfactant was found to be extremely toxic to aquatic organisms like fish. And so, I mean, that's one of the reasons why they developed these products that don't have them. I'd like you just to consider, I'm going to show you a couple photos of the situation in Yachats, but I'd like you to consider that most agencies and conservation organizations like the Nature Conservancy that use an integrated pest approach which considers herbicides as a last resort tool, consider herbicides as pretty much the only effective tool on a widespread basis for knotweeds. I would also have you understand that herbicides are considered a short-term option. Paul put up some really great numbers. I was looking at those numbers and I was thinking, you can kind of piecemeal these things out. Digging takes this long, herbicides take this long, but if you're using an integrated approach like you're starting to do in the town of Yachats, and which I really applaud, where you may be using herbicides once to kind of cut down on the amount of biomass that's there, and then you start approaching, using manual approaches, you can actually cut down on the amount of time and the resource that you use. Obviously it's all about, what you want to do, but that's what integrated approaches are all about, is using multiple tools. I just want to mention for our program, we have over 650 active sites right now, out of well over 1,000, and we're actually on track to controlling, I believe, the majority of knotweed in this county, and we're one of the few counties on the coast that's actively targeting and trying to control this stuff. I can tell you that the situation would be considerably worse had we not been working in Lincoln County for the last 8 years. Yachats is sort of a different beast, and I'll mention why that is later. But I believe in the next 2 or 3 years, based on the control we've been getting over the last 2 years of our methods, which is foliar spray, we may be done using herbicides in 2012 in the majority of the county. And I think that's a pretty lofty goal. There's a lot of ways that may not happen. But the use of herbicides on a particular site with knotweed, you're looking at about 2 to 3 years of treatment. And that really depends on a lot of different factors, but that's kind of a general, broad overview. But it's just meant to paint the picture that this can be a very short-term method. Okay, I should probably switch to the photos real quick. So this is, I hope everybody can see the little dots here. The red dots represent a knotweed site, and they don't represent necessarily how big these sites are, but they do represent a site. This is the town of Yachats in gray here, and here's the Yachats River. Up here is the north and south fork, and the majority of these little dots right here, we have begun treating over the last 2 years. Most of these are pretty small, anywhere from half the size of this table to a couple plants at this point. You can see the little green ones, those are the ones that have actually been controlled successfully. We're not seeing regrowth. I'm going to talk about this little area that's a little closer to town. Here's a little better of a photo of what I was just showing you. This is the Carson Meadow up here. It's the first major pasture you see when you're driving up the river, and this is the community of Quietwater. This right here is a piece of combined private industrial and Forest Service property, and this is a major infestation that I'll show you a little bit later in photos. What I want to show you though are two sites first that are a result of this infestation. Just show you kind of how knotweed progresses down the system. I hope you guys can see this photo. This is actually kind of close to Salmon Creek, which is across the way from where the water source is for Yachats. This is kind of the initial beginning stages of an infestation of knotweed. It's not very tall. This is probably about 3-4 feet tall per plant. There's still a lot of other vegetation left over. This has probably been going on for maybe a year or two. Here's another one, just shortly down the way. There's a canoe there for comparison. It kind of shows you the size of knotweed when it's just getting started. Now this is a little closer to that initial infestation I was showing you with the little schoolie line. These are a little bit more mature. If you can see, this is actually about 6, 7, maybe even 8 feet tall at its tallest. The more mature, this means the underground material has had a lot more time to develop, and the rhizome underground material is a lot more progressive. We treated this in 2009, and this is what it looks like today. What you probably can't see in that photo is there's little tiny knotweeds still coming up from the remaining rhizome. This is to be expected. And this is the kind of thing with stem injection we weren't able to treat. So it was pointless to even start in in the first hand, in my opinion. The amount of herbicide that it takes to treat this versus that is considerably less. That might be half a cup of diluted herbicide. Here's another site that's just a little ways upstream. It's a little bit more crowded of a picture, but the knotweed in there is pretty tall. That's what it looked like in 2010 this year. You'll notice that there's still quite a bit of just vegetation in general that comes back, and we tend to see a lot of the pioneer natives come back after these treatments, so that's a good sign. Now I'm going to show you two sections of this large infestation. It's the source for all this right here. That little yellow, those little yellow outlines. You see that right there? That's one of my crew members. That goes 30, 40 feet back. And that's actually just coming around the corner here. You can't even see how far it goes around. This, I mean, it's a real large site. This is nothing compared to what some places in Washington and other parts of Oregon have in other parts of the world. This is the largest infestation in along Riverside and Lincoln County. So this is as bad as it gets. This is just downstream a little ways. And the photo, I'm going to zoom in on one of the photos. It's a really good picture of how knotweed, which has the little white flowers you can see, is working its way in here. I mean, these native shrubs that are up top here, I'm not sure how much longer they're going to be there. That's the kind of thing that we want back. This is the ultimate goal. We're not here to kill and run. The ultimate goal is to replace native vegetation in these areas so the proper functioning ecosystems again. And this is the photo I meant to show you. On the bottom left of your screen there, that's actually floating material, the result of beavers most likely, or nutria or whatever. Those are knotweed canes that are starting to sprout just floating in water. Stuff's amazing. I really wish it was like the food source that we could solve, or well, and actually there's some really great recipes for this stuff. Apparently it tastes like rhubarb. There's like pie and ice cream recipes, so it works really great apparently. And then I just want to finish really quick with a site that was a landowner called me about. It was on a homestead site up on the LC Basin. He had seen an article I put in the paper about not mowing knotweed unless you're doing it a specific way. And he called me and said, you know what, I've been mowing knotweed, and I think maybe I have a problem. This is the upper part of the infestation. You'll notice there's a road kind of going along the middle here. This infestation up here is working its way over the hillside, down the slope, down Weiss Creek, ultimately working its way towards the LC River. If you were to stand right here in this clearing and turn down the slope, this is what you'd see. That doesn't look so bad until you realize that's a slope going down another drainage. If you were to walk down the slope and turn around and look up, that's what you would see. Improper use of manual control has a serious side effect. Now, most of this isn't a forested lot, but it's finding water, it's working its way down there, and eventually this could have a serious impact. We don't want to see this in this county. Plenty of Pacific Northwest has this story, and I think there's got to be a way to work to prevent this, especially in really amazing ecosystems that I personally get to work in every summer. And I get so many landowners. I work with over 400 landowners, and I get so many of them that just like thank me on the spot because they live here. They see what's happening, whether they have an ecological knowledge of the situation or if it's just the fact that it's crowding out the favorite fishing hole. They know it's important work, and they're really thankful of it. And that's the majority of the response I get, and I'm really happy. And I want to say I'm really, as far as any community I've worked with, Yachats is a pretty amazing example of the people that want to take charge of this and want to do something about it, if only in the urban area where they feel the most confident right now. And I really wish more communities in Lincoln County could do that. And I wish I had the resources and the time to facilitate it. Maybe we can get some some of you guys plant some of your seeds elsewhere and invade other states. Sorry for taking up so much time. I'm happy to answer questions later.